for most of your life so far that you've been working, you've had to be two people. You're you and your true self and the person that children sees and the person that exists at home and around your friends. And then you've got business you. And that's usually a slightly different version of yourself. What happened to me at that point in my life has sort of fueled some of what we're trying to achieve at Sales Geek in terms of changing the way the world perceives sales. But I loved it.
That's cool, yeah. That's a good way to get a business name. A lot of people think about it hard or just randomly pick out a word. You thought, do you know what? I'm going to own this. Yeah, why not?
The market size was massive already. I mean, over 90% of the UK economy is made up of SMEs. And what's bizarre, I find, particularly in sort of the business advice space that we kind of float around in different ways, is that actually most people are trying to get to the big companies. They're trying to get to the blue chips. They're trying to get the big day rates, the big ticket items. And as it was to stop, I went to push the clutch down, went back in my seat, which then meant my foot flicked off the pedal, and went back and put a massive hole in a brand new showroom wall that was due to open the next day. We had balloons everywhere.
So, Richard Few, welcome to the Disenfranchised. How are you doing today?
I'm very good, thanks, Ed. How are you?
Yes, very well. Thank you very much. Living the dream over here. It's still sunny, even when it's heading into sort of winter time. So I love this sort of weather. So I'm very happy at the moment. But how's everything in your world at the moment? Are you keeping busy?
Good. Yeah, we are super busy. It's I think seasonally for our products and services, it's always a busy time of the year, and then on top of that, we're busy with new franchisees joining us and international launches and stuff. So it's a particularly manic period at the moment, but we're good busy, I think, is probably the way that people would term it.
Fantastic. Well, look, we're going to jump into your business in a little bit, but before we do, I want to start in the same place I do with everybody, and that's I'd love to find out what your first job was.
My first job?
Yeah.
My first job out of school. So I left school at 16, and my first proper employed job was as an assistant golf pro at a golf club. So my career choice I was going through school was to play golf for a living. Wasn't very academic. And you hear it all the time. People go, "Oh yeah, you need to make sure you still get some qualifications. It doesn't work out." I was the guy. I was like, "It's definitely going to work out. There's no way on earth I'm not going to be doing this for a living." And then 2 years later, I found myself doing something else. But yeah, essentially, sort of like played golf for a living and sold tees and balls in the pro shop for my first job.
Fantastic. So, what sort of handicap did you have at that time?
So I didn't get as far as actually turning pro. So when you work as an assistant pro, you're still an amateur, and then you can sort of turn pro. So I was playing off 2 back then, which in the world of amateur golf's decent. But when you're rocking up to national tournaments as a 17-year-old and getting beaten by like 12, 13-year-old kids that are playing off +1 and +2, you realise that when you're 3 or 4 shots around worse than people that are 5 years younger than you, you kind of realise that you're probably not going to make a living out of this.
Yeah, that's fair enough, and I guess that's what's happened then, sort of 2 years later. And so, what kind of direction did your career go in then?
So I guess in some respects, what happened to me at that point in my life has sort of fueled some of what we're trying to achieve at Sales Geek in terms of changing the way the world perceives sales, because it's not a considered career choice for anyone usually, and it wasn't for me. So kind of the golf thing wasn't working out. Didn't know what to do, but I'd been working at that same golf club in the pro shop, actually even part-time since I was sort of 13 years old, and then full-time for a couple of years. So I was good with dealing with people. I was good at engaging with people that were members of the club and guests coming through, and I was quite well renowned for selling stuff from the shop. And so I had a couple of job offers to go into sales, and having grown up with a dad who was a mechanic, I love vehicles, and one of the guys offered me a job in essentially in the motor trade. So my first, I guess, sort of like proper sales job was selling secondhand Nissans in Slough, which at 18 years old was a seriously steep learning curve, man, I can assure you.
I'll bet if you think about it, at that age, that's quite a lot of value in the product that you're selling, right? It's not a golf ball at the end of the day, is it? It's talking thousands of pounds that you're selling.
It's the most expensive thing you buy after a house typically is a car. So yeah, it was I learned a lot. I learned so much in that first couple of years. I mean, the motor trade gets a bad press, and I understand why in certain aspects of it, but actually the training that I got there and the things I learned about how to deal with the public there's a lot of stuff that carried me through big chunks of the rest of my sort of career after that.
Yeah. What was the biggest shock for you then? Was it the general public and how they act, or?
The biggest shock for me was, yeah, it was, I suppose, I liked the idea of sales, but I guess until I got into it and I realized there's a lot of pressure, and I think there's a lot of sales environments where there's a lot of pressure. And I think some sales cultures and sales environments are better than others. And I've worked in a couple of very high pressure, target driven sales environments where, in my opinion, they will sacrifice their values and a lot of other things in order to get to those numbers. And I never felt comfortable with that. I never agreed with it. And I was exposed to that quite early on in my career. And a lot about what we do now at Sales Geek is kind of fueled by that not being a good thing. And I think we've all been on the wrong end of a bad experience as a customer at some point. And my personal belief is that is more driven by the poor culture that a person's working in rather than the individual themselves. And yeah, it was that. I think it was a combination of the pressure. I think I massively underestimated how many people you got to speak to make a sale and how hard that is to deal with rejection. I mean, when someone walks into a pro shop to get a sleeve of balls, they've come into the pro shop to get a sleeve of balls. Now, all of a sudden, I'd be sat in a showroom on a Saturday morning and someone's coming in to have a test drive of a Nissan Micra, but they're also going to go and test drive 7 other cars on that same day. So learn, like, understanding that and the dynamics of that and how you manage and deal with it was a big shift and a big culture shock, I think, for me then.
Yeah, I'll bet. So why didn't it put you off then? What did you enjoy about that job? Because I'm guessing you did, because you've then gone on and done other roles within sales, right?
Yeah, although it was hard, and yeah, I suppose like most young people, you're still trying to figure out what you want to do in life. I think when you're that age, and actually, it probably carries on into your 20s. And I did have that early part of my career. I tried some stuff out. I had jobs that I only lasted 6 weeks because I thought it'd be amazing. You go in and it was rubbish, and well, not rubbish. It just didn't fit me and my style of how I thought sales should be done. And but I loved it. And the reason why I loved it was, so I wasn't very academic, but I loved kind of self-development and self-learning, like from an athletic perspective. So like with my golf, I was obsessive. Like I was absolutely obsessive with practice and working on the stuff I wasn't good at. And I was on the range till it get dark at night. I'd go out on a practice range, we'd smash it down with rain. I was the only person on the golf course. So I used to work hard at stuff. And I took that into sales. And I very quickly realized that the better I got, the more successful I was, the more opportunities I get, the more money I was earning. And having grown up in a working class family, the sorts of money I started to earn at a relatively young age, just through my hard work and self-development, was like, if this is what sales is about for me, I can go and nail this shit. I can go after this and make a career for myself out of it. And I made a very conscious decision then that this was for me, and I could take control of my own destiny, learn, develop myself, get better at this. And it was up for me to go and do it, really, rather than being handed stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think that, like you said, there's too many people that look at sales and go, do you know what? I fancy a career in it's sales. I mean, there are some, but they normally go after it for the money, right? That's what it is, the commissions that you can earn. Listening to you speak about it there, it feels like you're seeing it as a career and improving your skills as you go through. You've not just had one job and that's it, I know how to sell. You're trying to kind of perfect every stage of the way, which is quite interesting and refreshing as well. The other point I wanted to kind of go back on was you mentioned about kind of businesses that just all about churning the numbers, right? You always hear sales is just a numbers game, right? And I agree with you. I think I always had a bit of an issue with that. There's some truth in it, I think, but when the person at the top, that's all they're interested in, that's when in the past I've lost faith in working for that organization, because I come to that realization, okay, they're just pushing numbers. They've got no why that I can get on board with, right? And I'm guessing it's kind of the same thing for you in your career.
Yeah, I've worked in some organisations where there's been no heart. There's been I've not enjoyed it. Like you say, you are there as a robotic salesperson to churn out numbers at all costs in some of those organisations. I won't name any names on here just for now. But but there's some environments I went into and left very, very quickly because it was boiler room. Like it was purely the numbers on the wall. Hit it, don't hit it. If you hit it, you got a job. If you don't hit it, you haven't got one. Just find a way. And unfortunately, that just find a way attitude generally leads to really poor behaviours. And there wasn't much training available. It was just like, here's a phone, here's a laptop or a computer and a phone.
Yeah.
Like go and make it rain. And unfortunately, even in 2022, as we sit here talking now, there's still, unfortunately, a lot of organisations still running the same way. And unfortunately, for as long as that happens, that is going to be the perception of sales to a lot of people. And I think the balance of better organisations is getting there, but there are organisations that's how they treat their sales functions.
Sure. So I don't want to go kind of every stage through your career, but I want to get to kind of how and why you started Sales Geek in a moment. But one final question before we do is, what sort of size organisations were these that you were working in? And you mentioned there, not all of them kind of have the right structure in place. So explain to me kind of your experiences around the sizes of the companies that you were working with.
So I suppose most of my early career, because I did the motor trade thing for a few years, and then I kind of worked really hard to get into the B2B world, and I mean worked really hard. You know, as a young guy in my early 20s with no academic qualifications really, and having spent the first few years of my sales career in the motor trade, there weren't people queuing up to interview me. And fortunately, I then got an opportunity and made it stick. Moved into the B2B world. But still kind of primarily in that SME space for a number of years and loved it. I absolutely loved working in businesses that were privately owned, where I had a relationship and connection with the business owner. It was great. But I guess, a couple of the businesses I worked with at the latter end of my career, the biggest of those was 1.3 billion euro company who acquired one of the smaller businesses that I was head of sales at. And then my last role was in a $300 million North American PLC, which again, culturally is a really interesting machine. Very different ways of doing business to what we have here in the UK. So yeah, a real mix of sizes of organizations.
Cool. So tell me then, how did you start Sales Geek? What led you to that point where you decided, that's it, I'm going to go out on my own and create this thing?
Unhappiness and a sense of not belonging where I ended up, really, I guess. So my last employed role, I was global sales director for a $300 million North American PLC. I was 32, so I guess in theory, from the 18-year-old kid that was selling secondhand cars, having left school at 16, to be 32 and be in that role, I guess I was fulfilling other people's definition of success, and actually probably my own. I guess, probably if I dug out my list of personal goals when I was 20 years old, I'd have taken that, actually. And I was getting paid really well and stock options, and I even got paid a signing on bonus for my last job. It was ridiculous. I couldn't believe it. That's kind of where I'd ended up. Yeah. But I didn't at the same time. I was internally becoming quite unhappy, and it's quite a demanding job anyway. I was traveling a lot. I was away from my family. There was a lot of pressure. Again, I was starting to get asked to do things that I didn't really feel comfortable doing within how I had to manage my team and the resources and stuff like that. But just fundamentally, for a multitude of different reasons, I didn't fit in. I didn't fit into corporate business. It wasn't me. Part of that, maybe it was an age thing. I was the youngest person on the boards and leadership teams of those organisations by quite a distance. So really, I suppose back in August 2016, I was only 6 months into that last job, and I knew just instinctively everything in here said, this is not you, dude. You don't belong here. And it all kicked off with a conversation with a mentor of mine, a chap called Paul Friedman, who's been an absolute angel to me. And I sat down with him and had a coffee in August 2016, which ended up being about 6 months before we launched the business, and just said, look, I feel like I've got two choices. I can learn to find a way to be not happy, but exist here and do this, and I suppose milk it for what it's giving me and my family. We were a single income family at the time. Me and my wife came from poor families with no bank of mum and dad anywhere in our world. It was like what we had is what we'd built ourselves, and it was all dependent on my income. Lucy being a full-time mum for sort of 3.5, 4 years at that point. So I do that and just make it work, or I kind of cut loose and do another thing. And he rightly said to me, "That's not a choice you need to make, man. The question is, how do you do the second one?" It was the exact words to me. And I chucked a couple of ideas across the table, which he kind of batted away. One of them actually is now, what is the Sales Geek app? And he just said, look, unless you got £250,000 and a year and a half's worth of mortgage payments, you're not building and launching that. And yeah, I guess from that conversation, and then the sort of the ensuing next few months after it, and the business planning and stuff, and its Sales Geek and its initial product offering was born as a business. The name existed to me prior to that. I'd registered the domain name 2 or 3 years before, not because I had a business, but because someone called me it, and I just went and registered the domain name. I didn't. It was no business plan or anything. It was just someone. I won't use the exact words I used because one of them was quite derogatory. But it's like, "Oh, you're a proper sales geek." And I'm like, "Yeah, actually, you know what? I am. I've been obsessed by this for years. I've worked really hard at it, and I've learned a lot. I've self-educated. I've done a lot of stuff. And yeah, I'm probably a bit of a geek. I'm probably a bit of a nerd when it comes to sales." So bought a domain name, and then yeah, fortunately, the name and the business idea I had kind of went together. What I thought well, and yeah, I guess a few months later, it was born.
That's cool. Yeah, like that's a good way to get a business name. A lot of people sort of think about it hard or just randomly pick out a word, but you've kind of been not labelled it, but somebody's almost given you that title, and you've thought, yeah, do you know what? I'm going to own this. Yeah, why not?
Although saying that, when I tried to match the name with the sort of the business model that we'd built out, I'd say 3 of the people who I trust the most in the world told me not to use it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they said it's not professional enough. It's not going to, it's a bit too tongue in cheek. It's a bit cheeky. It's not slick. It's not. And I listened to that. So actually, I did do the exercise of like locking myself away in the room and writing down a million different names and ideas, and then like trying to go online and see whether domains are available. I did that for about a month, only to then sit there and go, do you know what? If I'm going to do this and fail, I might as well do it whilst being myself and using Sales Geek as a name. And I'd say probably if some of the good decisions we've made over these last 5 years, that was one of them for sure.
I come from a sales background myself in a form of sales anyway, in recruitment, and I think it's bang on the money right now, to be honest with you. I'm not just saying that because we're here, but it I don't know, it adds some personality rather than sales training professional 24/7 or whatever. It actually appeals to probably your target audience. In terms of the business owners right now, right? So
yeah, exactly. I think what you just said there, you're absolutely on the point. Trying to inject some personality in it. Like I think the professional services world and sort of the training and advice world is quite boring. And actually, I think especially to young people, business can be like, "Oh, business is a boring thing. I don't want to be interested in that." So if we were going to deliver on our mission to change the way the world perceives sales, not only did we have to feel like we had some personality to the people that we were trying to engage with at a client level, but also part of our CSR agenda was to get a level of sales education and career awareness into young people as well. So we had to have a brand that both of those people would want to engage with. And like you say, calling ourselves Richard Few Training Consultant Limited 24/7 this would have been a bit naff, wouldn't it? So
yeah, totally. So tell me a bit more about the business model. I want to understand why you've gone and set up this business. What was your main driver to set up this business model, and what is it actually doing sort of today?
So I suppose probably like most people's business models, it's definitely evolved. So our founding product was a service called Your Sales Director. So I suppose at the time, because it was me in this part of the country, kind of doing it on my own initially, wanted to take myself as a kind of, I suppose probably arguably overpaid but highly paid corporate sales director that I'd become, and I suppose kind of deploy myself back into small businesses on a really part-time basis from half a day a month to a day a week, and make my skills and services accessible to the people I believe actually needed it the most. And that was really fueled by the fact that whilst I've been going on this career and doing well and earning good money and applying my skills and knowledge into these businesses, I'd seen people fail. I'd seen people quite close to me start businesses and fail during that time. And so when I was getting pressured about, okay, so what you're going to do, what you're going to do, what you're going to do, I just instinctively said, I'd love to be able to go and help some of these small businesses that the stats are scary, man. Like, 8 out of 10 of these guys don't make it to their 5th birthday. It's not, it's like the Hunger Games, right? The odds are not in your favor as a startup entrepreneur, business owner, whatever people brand themselves as. So I looked at that and kind of went, well, why do they fail? And that was really interesting. What came back was the 2 main reasons were cash and competency. So cash, I'm like, well, that's fine, because what I've done for my whole career is generate revenue either directly or through sales leadership for the business I've worked for. So tick. And then the competency thing, did a bit more digging, and the vast majority of businesses actually are started by people that aren't from a sales and or marketing background, actually, but particularly a sales background. Most business owners often they've created the product. They're operators, they're inventors, they're technicians, they're developers, they're people that build the thing, not necessarily go and speak to other human beings about the thing. And therefore, they generally struggle to get, traction and the revenue streams that they need from the products and service. So I believed then that if I could deploy myself, and then in turn other people, but deploy myself into those businesses, we could help just stack the odds back in their favor a little bit. And if I'm honest, it wasn't actually really about success necessarily. It was about survival for some of these guys. And it is, having gone on that journey myself, the first year or two, for all the ambitions and stuff in the world, you are trying to survive. You are and I mean, at all costs, you're trying to exist and survive. And a lot of survival instinct kicks in. The scale and success and stuff comes later. You never fully shake the survival thing, I don't think, properly as a business owner, but that comes later. But yeah, that's all we wanted to do. So for me, it was like, well, if I can do that and people need it and they want it and I can add some value, then I felt like that was scalable. Ultimately, I felt we could scale that in time. But the business evolved, and we added on training and the app, and there's other things that we did. But at our core, we are, I would say, probably at scale the largest people that do what we do in the UK in that provision of fractional sales directors to small businesses.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I hadn't really boiled it down before into why business owners fail in the first 5 years. And I've heard those stats before. I'm a new business myself, so I'm sitting here and I'm seeing 1,000,001 different reasons why people might fail, right? But I guess, like you say, it ultimately boils down to, at some point I'm worried about running out of money because I can't live off, the money that's there forever.
Yep.
And yeah, just I think it resonates quite a bit with me. If you know what I mean, I hear what you're saying, and having that person come in and actually sort of assist you on the sales side. So I come from a sales and marketing background, and still sitting there thinking about, am I positioning this right? Am I doing the right things? Is my kind of sales process set up right? I've never created this business before. And that's the same for a lot of other people. There's no kind of a model to follow, really, is there? There's no kind of set formula. And so you're having to work out all these things on your own. Having that second pair of eyes of somebody who's perhaps been there, done that, I think would be really, really valuable, actually, for a lot of businesses. And I'm guessing you've got quite a big market at the moment, right? Because after COVID in particular, a lot of people went out there and started their own business, didn't they? Because they just saw an opportunity to focus on something else, whether on furlough maybe, or could see, maybe a recession come in and thought, well, let's get ahead of the game. So, is that true from your point of view, the market size?
Yeah, the market size was massive already. I mean, over 90% of the UK economy is made up of SMEs, and what's bizarre, I find, particularly in sort of the business advice space that we kind of float around in different ways, is that actually most people are trying to get to the big companies, they're trying to get to the blue chips, they're trying to get the big day rates and the big ticket items. We deliberately, both with the fractional sales director and training, built out a set of products and services that were aimed at that SME community. Now, we have by accident, in turn, then picked up some bigger clients because of the quality of the work that we're doing, which is lovely, and it's great for the brand, and it's brilliant to be able to look after and say we've looked after those businesses. But for me, there was nobody, particularly in the sales advice space, there was no one really being a real champion of the SMEs, and there's a massive chunk of the market anyway, and it's getting bigger. So, I think what most economists are saying that there's been a lot of foreign investment pulled out of the UK, which includes large organisations, international organisations that would have infrastructure here pulling out. Most of those people and jobs have been mopped up by that SME community. So it's growing as a percentage of GDP. There's more and more SMEs and a lot more early startups. And the stats, both in the UK and the US at the minute, on new business registrations is massive. It's the fastest growth that we've seen since the back end of the Second World War.
Yeah, wow. It's pretty impressive sort of numbers and opportunity really then for you. And I guess that's partly why kind of the next stage of the business kind of evolved right into the franchising world. So you started in 2017, I believe. That's what I saw somewhere on one of the sites. When did you start franchising the business?
So I suppose like most people, there was a bit of a journey. Such an X Factor thing to say. There was a set of thought processes prior to pressing the red button on the franchise thing. So it was in our original business plan. When I sat at home in October, November 2016, trying to figure out what Sales Geek would be, because I was young, so I didn't want to just be self-employed. I wanted to put some time and effort in something that could become a business rather than just a job for me. And the thing that sat in there that stood out a mile was franchise, and I didn't know anything about franchise at all, other than that conceptually, if I could make this work in Lancashire as me doing this service with a team, that could be repeated elsewhere. So therefore, it was something we wanted to explore. I then got my fingers burnt a year in with someone that I'd actually known for a while and trusted, but they at a point where we couldn't afford all the appropriate contracts and documentation and stuff, got my fingers burnt and ran away from it for a year or two. And then it came back to us in February 2020 was the time where we sat down and went, okay, we need to put this back on the table. I'd actually gone and done a speaking gig at a company's conference. It was a franchise-based business. The head office had a big event up in County Durham, went up there, spoke at this event, and it filled me with so much warmth and seeing the relationship between the franchisee, the franchisor, the franchisees themselves. They had some awards in the evening at this conference. And I come away from there driving home on the Sunday, and I rang a couple of my team and went, we've got to find a way to make that happen. That was incredible. If we could recreate that over the next couple of years, that would be amazing. And it's going to help us scale quicker. It's going to help us achieve our mission to change the way the world, and the key word is the world, perceives sales. And how do we go and do that? Like through employment, it's going to be hard. So let's do it through franchise. So had that conversation in February. COVID hit, depleted our cash reserves. Then we couldn't afford to do it because it's expensive. Turning a non-franchise business into a franchise business is a very time-consuming, expensive process. But one of our values is that we're geeks are brave, so we rolled the dice, man, if I'm honest. And we went, do you know what? if this whole thing's going to end, it's better that it ends in 3 months in a blaze of glory than ends in 6 in a slow, painful way. So let's go at it. So we went at it, and because one thing we had back was time. And actually, for me, get asked all the time, how much does it cost to turn your business into a franchise business? Forget the hard costs. Your time is the most expensive thing that you're going to consume during that period of time. We had loads of it back because we lost 75% of our income through customers, right, in a very short period of time. So we built it out, found ourselves franchisee number one in September 2020, who was very kindly a guinea pig for us. And it was very evident by the time we got through to Christmas that was working. It was working for him. It was working for us. The quality of delivery to our clients was working. So we launched in January 21 properly. But that was after, I suppose, nearly a year's worth of hard work. Yeah.
It's not an easy transition for a business because, like you say, the time that you're then focusing on franchising the business and getting everything in place, because it's not just, hey, let's sell a license and we'll show them. You've got to kind of document it all, right, and make sure all the legal elements are in place and make sure you're actually going to be able to support them properly. I can see the big challenge, but I'm glad it's working out for you. And how many franchisees do you have now?
So as we sit here now, October 2022, so we've sold 23 territories in the UK. There's a cap of 55. We mapped out the UK into 55 regions. We deliberately made them big enough so the guys can scale rather than just be kind of, again, sort of self-employed. They're scalable regions. So yeah, we're making really good progress. And again, trying to your point, the challenge is the franchise product is clearly something that excites people, is interesting to people. We get a lot of interest around it, which means we can be picky about who we award franchises to, which is great. But it's then just balancing that with the operational support, marketing support, and the support infrastructure, because your whole financial model changes, your whole business model changes when you've got other people delivering your products and services, and therefore how that day rate and those fees are shifted around the business is completely different. So layering that overhead whilst also seeing more revenue going out the door to the people delivering your services over and above when your employed team are delivering them, that's a really difficult transition to navigate through for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, so how obviously part of the learning for you in franchising your business is how to support these franchisees, right, and get them off the ground and running. I had a look to see what sort of backgrounds they've come from, and typically they are from a sales background or a commercial background, but they're at a CEO or MD kind of level, right? And from my own experience, I've seen that people at that level forget what it's like on the ground floor, right? To actually start to do the sales, getting and marketing and things like that. So what support do you guys provide to the new franchisees that come on board?
So our role, to your point, our role is to rehabilitate these long lost corporate sales directors back into the real world, if I'm being perfectly honest, because it's not, part of that is them going out and selling and acquiring their own clients and I suppose kind of getting back into that skill. But actually, even how they behave in their clients' boardrooms different to how they need to behave. If we have one of these guys that comes from the backgrounds they've had and they go and kind of put that sort of pinstripe version of themselves into a room with a small business owner, it doesn't work. So we have to truly unlock the real version of them. So whenever we're going through the recruitment process, we get to meet the real person. We don't meet the work version. And I think that for me is part of our value proposition to our franchisees is, for most of your life so far that you've been working, you've had to be two people. You're you and your true self and the person that your children sees and the person that exists at home and around your friends. And then you've got business you. And that's usually a slightly different version of yourself. And part of our role is to help them be themselves all the time, because that version of themselves is the version that the small business owners that they help want to see. And it's way less tiring being one person rather than two. So a lot of it is a big shift. It's a massive shift. You've got to check these guys out. We've got some big hitters in this program, and and that's different. They've had endless resources available to them. They've worked for some of the biggest brands in the world, which is amazing, and our clients get really excited about it. But that also, there's some negatives to that. They've had, it's so easy to open a door when you work for some of the brands that these guys have worked for. It's easy to solve problems when you've got infinite budgets and infinite resource available to you. So it is a shift, and some of them kind of do it and make the change very quickly. Some of them we have to work with for a little bit longer to just go on that adjustment process. But I would say that's the biggest bit of support is that transition, and also the going from being part of a very big corporate organization with lots of people around them to sort of being on their own as a franchisee. Now they're part of our community, and we've got lots of franchisees now, so they're part of that community and HQ, so they feel connected. But on a day-to-day basis, they're still out in their local town, in their local community, on their own, doing the thing that they do, and supporting them through that phase is really critical.
Yeah, I think something that's really interesting. So I've spoken to lots of people over the years about potentially, investing in a franchise, and this concept of yours seems fairly simple, if you don't mind me saying so. You take your sales experience and putting it into a small, medium-sized business, giving them the value of your experience. A lot of people will feel they can go out there and just do it themselves, right? As a consultant, as a contractor, and make it work. But I think the point that you mentioned there that's most interesting is that they're part of a community, and they're part of a team that is working towards a common goal. I think that's the big difference for people when they come out of a corporate world. They're used to having those teams around them, whether they're right at the top of it or part of the kind of the tiered system. You know, they've got people around them that can help them to do those other things, and that's the big difference. I think if you go on your own, it is literally you've got nobody else to kind of support you. And I think whether you know it or not, I'm sure you do, that's probably the biggest value that you offer to these directors, really, is helping them transition, but it's being part of a team still.
So it's interesting. So we asked them the question. So once they kind of go, yeah, I'm in, you know, at some point between then and when they come on board, we'll ask them the question, you know, what ultimately within the sphere of choices that you had available to you, why did you choose this and why did you choose Sales Geek? There's a few common themes in that, without a doubt. So there's, you know, kind of, you know, brands, credibility, you know, the methodologies that we deploy into our clients, and, you know, the fractional sales director model is simple, but there's a lot of things you need to know, and you get exposed to a lot of different sectors and different businesses. So having a combined 600 years worth of experience behind you is massive. So there was a lot of stuff around that. They felt like it was going to be easier to find their first few clients. You know, obviously with the training stuff, they got the materials. So there was all that. But hands down, the number one thing is exactly what you said. And it is, I didn't want to do it on my own. I wanted to be, I want to work with autonomy and independence, but I want to be part of something bigger. And you know, so I've got someone to pick up the phone to. I've got someone that can stop me from making some of the same mistakes. And we did that. You know, we've walked this journey, and I think we were 3 years old. Well, nearly 4 years old at the point that we properly publicly launched Sales Geek franchise. You know, so we were 4 years in. We were at a level of revenue. We built a team out. You know, we've gone on that journey of recruiting people, making some mistakes, office moves. You know, kind of product innovation. We've kind of gone on a lot of things. We did a lot of stuff. So they get to save a lot of money by not making the same amount of mistakes. But ultimately, they want to be part of our tribe. They want to be part of our this really slightly weird, wacky, kind of eccentric group of geeks that that are doing some good stuff in the world.
That's cool. So how many support staff do you have in like the head office team?
So HQ team currently is just shy of 20. We've got a couple of ads out at the minute for 2 hires that, again, directly tie into support in 2 different ways, but in support. So yeah, and obviously that team are spread both across supporting our franchisees, supporting our future growth of acquisition of new franchisees in both UK and US. We've now launched in the US, but also we have, you know, like our app as well, which we grow and run from here. Franchisees can sell it and get people on it, but ultimately that's dev'd and stuff in here as well. So yeah, a real eclectic mix of team here, which we need to grow. We've just moved office, as you know, to fuel that growth and make sure we've got room for people ultimately, because as much as we have flexible working, I think there's something in the culture we've built here that our guys seem to want to come into the office at least 3 to 4 days a week, even though we tell them they can work at home, which means they want desks and they need stuff and kitchens and things. Yeah, we've not really saved much money on property costs for this homework and stuff. It's all in here.
No, that's cool though. It's like you say, it's a good sign. It's a positive sign of a good culture. So yeah, you must be doing something right there, which is cool. And before I move on to kind of my final 3 questions, I want to ask you, what's the future for the brand then, and why would that potentially be interesting to, you know, prospective franchisees, somebody who might want to buy into this business?
So I mean, the clear and obvious step for us is so at the moment we're trying to balance 2 things. So it's the continuation of, well, maintaining the success of the guys here in the UK and pushing that and helping the guys and girls that we've already got here be more successful. That's our commitment to them, whilst maintaining the same cadence of acquisition of new franchisees, because I believe they're all stronger when there's more of them, and the ability to share more with each other. You know, it's easier to have kind of regional think tanks within the team. So we believe they'll all benefit from having more friends and more neighbours with their territories. But we think that probably given our current cadence, that within 18 months, the UK will be sold out. And the other byproduct of selling out the UK is it increases the value of our franchisees' business, because it's more scarce now, because we haven't got loads of territories available to buy if somebody wants to come knock it. So we're delivering on our promise of helping them grow the value of their business. And the other thing that we're doing that will help them increase the value of their business, was also increasing the value of the brand overall, is the US launch and the international expansion that we're after. So we launched into the US a couple of weeks ago. We are in the process of acquiring our early adopters, I guess, and those first couple of people through the door, to rebuild our model, the international model around these people. So that's a really exciting phase for us. And the US is super exciting. Even some of the mid-sized states will take as many franchisees as we've got here in the UK. So from a volume perspective, it's exciting, and volume's important to us, because for every franchisee, that's another business community being served. That's another community of small and micro business owners who couldn't previously access the help that we provide, that can now access it because we've got somebody there. That's exciting. We're delivering on our mission at that point. But that's going to be a really fun chapter of our journey. And again, while doing that and becoming an international brand, we are indirectly adding value to the value of the businesses franchisees currently own in the UK. So that's our part of the deal. So yes, it's partly service, but it's also the more we can grow and the further we can take Sales Geek, the more value we're adding to their businesses. And that's our way of delivering back on our promise back to them.
Yeah, I think it's it's interesting, that statement you mentioned there, stronger together, because sitting on the other side, somebody might sit there and go, is it though? If I've got a territory, how's the person moving in next door benefiting me? They're taking away perhaps the opportunity for me to expand into that territory. So is it really a benefit to me? But I always think about the kind of it from the brand perspective. So businesses, like every other business, they don't always just sit in one county or one territory, do they? Right? Yeah. They've got clients that are elsewhere that they can talk to about what you've done for them. They've got potentially a satellite office somewhere else that could also benefit people. So actually, if the whole of the UK is filled up, that's great, because that means you've got the potential to reach every single business across the whole of the UK, which then in turn might have an operation or a connection to somebody within your territory. And so that for me is one of the big benefits of being stronger together. And also, as you say, that international piece, a lot of the UK based businesses, or some of the companies that have bases in the UK, are actually US based, right? There, and all the decisions are made in head office in the US. So if you can tap into that US market, fantastic. It means there's going to probably be some form of, I know it's not a popular term at the minute, but trickle down kind of effect into the UK, right?
True though.
Perhaps I should have used a better phrase there, but you see what I mean, right?
But no, you're absolutely right, and I think, yeah, I mean, there is an argument to say that if a franchisee's got a territory and the one next door is open, that in theory they can go and fish in that territory up until the point that it's sold. But actually, for us, the value of having two of them sharing ideas and sharing best practice and supporting each other, and actually, even if you take a region, I said the Midlands, we've got 5 or 6 guys at the minute that that they can club together and even club together their financial resources and market more effectively across their own micro region, outside of the brand-led stuff that we're doing. So for me, there's absolutely strength in numbers, and the territories. There's some organisations that really thinly slice their territories. We are not one of those, and so there is, given the volume of capacity that they have versus the total available market in their area, one thing they don't need is more land. Trust me. We've got guys who own the cities that have got 50, 60,000 businesses within their region, and they start off as one person, right? So they don't need more. They don't need more land. They need more ideas. They need more sharing. They need more exposure, and you get that by having more people kind of flying the badge around and flying the flag and promoting what we do.
Fantastic. Right, let's get on with these final 3 questions then. Thank you for sharing kind of all that, the kind of your story, your background, and plenty about Sales Geek. I think it's fascinating business, and one I never would have known about, a few years ago, because I thought franchising was just McDonald's or whatever, right? But I think there's big opportunity in these white collar businesses that yeah, a lot of people that are in the corporate world are missing out on by not exploring them. So, anyway, first question: any funny, strange, or weird stories you're happy to share with us?
Yeah, so slightly funny, but I guess probably a moral lesson as well. I had the worst possible start to my professional career. So, like I said, binned off the golf thing, ended up in the motor trade, kind of learning to sell in the motor trade. And that was in Slough, but it was only in Slough for a few weeks because they were opening a new showroom in High Wycombe, which was nearer to where I lived, back down south at the time. So I was this young 18-year-old, kind of frosted tips sales guy. And actually, I got off to a reasonably good start. And then the day that we were moving into the new showroom, I was asked to reverse a vehicle into the showroom. And having grown up reasonably poor, I'd never sat in a car with electric seats before. So I sat in the car. I didn't know how to move the seat forward. I'd been in the motor trade for like a few weeks, right? I didn't know how this whole thing worked. So I sat forward on the edge of my seat so I could reach the pedals, and I'm sort of like clutch control, reversing the car into the showroom. And then the person who was ushering me in went, "Stop." And as I said stop, I went to push the clutch down, went back in my seat, which then meant my foot flicked off the pedal, and went back and put a massive hole in a brand new showroom wall that was due to open the next day. We had balloons everywhere. We had and there was basically a hole the size of a Nissan Primera.
I hope you said you told me to put it into it.
They increased the target a little bit for the next couple of months coming up, but I made another massive schoolboy error in that first month as well. I took an order off somebody and stuck it in my drawer. I forgot to process the order. When the family turned up the next week to collect their car, it wasn't prepped. So within that first 2 months, I nearly didn't have a career in sales. So hopefully, as a moral lesson, as a way for everything, right? My credibility in that organisation was pretty low at that point. So yeah, I was the 18-year-old kid that put a hole in the brand new unopened showroom wall.
Oh man, what a nightmare! Must have been really anxiety-inducing, sort of knowing in that moment you've potentially, crashed your career into.
I just couldn't believe they didn't fire me. Like, genuinely, given the culture in the organisation, as I was getting out of that car, I'd resigned myself to the fact that someone's going to walk over to me and go, "Get out." And they should have done, and they genuinely could have done. I've been in the business like a month, and I was a young kid, and
you've cost them more money than you've brought in by that point.
We're going to fix that. We're going to pay for that. We're going to repair it. There's only one way you can pay us back, right? And that's we're about to open this new showroom. We need to get off to a good start. Go sell some cars, and we'll forgive you. And they did, actually, to be fair to them. But I resigned myself to the fact I was getting fired.
Nice. So let's try and find something that's a little bit more upbeat for you in your career anyway. So I'm interested to find out if you have, or what's been the most proud or the most inspiring moment you've had in your career.
So, I mean, yeah, on one hand, I was super proud of what I'd achieved from my employed career and given where I come from. But I think the thing that's probably made me the most proud is the impact we've had through Sales Geek on both our franchisees' lives and then in turn their clients. And a few months ago, in we have a sort of an all hands town hall meeting in here. I'd reached out to a few of our franchisees prior to that and just asked them 2 questions and just said, what impact has being a Sales Geek had on your life? And then the second question was, what impact have you had on the lives of others as a result of being part of Sales Geek? And some of those responses I got back really just made me realize why we do what we do. And the numbers become irrelevant when you start reading the impact. And I stood in front of my team and read a couple of those out, and I really struggled. I got really emotional with it because I've got franchisees telling me that they're better husbands, they're better fathers, they're better friends to their friends. They've got more social time. They're spending more time with their kids. They feel more fulfilled. They're getting more back from the things that they're doing, whilst also positively impacting these small business owners. And for me, seeing that and seeing their fulfillment, there's nothing I've done that's eclipsed that.
That's awesome. So worth trading in the corporate career with the big salary and the stock options and all that for going out on your own then.
Most of the time.
Apart from when you move in office, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it is great. I love it, and I do love the variety of it. And there's always a surprise around the corner, but there's also some dark times. There are, we've had some real challenges. We've lived through. We launched 6 months after the Brexit referendum. We've lived through COVID. We've lived through, the verge of a third world war potentially. We were due to launch into the US the day after the Queen sadly passed away, and it's like we've had all sorts go on, and even just difficult trading periods, and it's not all Porsches and roses, right? And I think sometimes social media does a really bad job of helping young people think that via Instagram you can start a business and you're a millionaire in 2 years. It's a lot of our work, and I mean a lot, and that, right? You're living that journey yourself, as we did as a family, and me and my wife are both in the business, and it's not even long days. It's everything. It's all of you, all of the time, relentlessly, weekends, evenings, chatting over dinner about work stuff rather than kid stuff. Like it's it consumes you, and sometimes that becomes a lot. It becomes quite overwhelming. There's no two ways about it, and healthy boundaries become a really important thing. But I love it. It's my youngest child, Sales Geek. I have a 9-year-old called Ellis, and I have a 5.5-year-old called Sales Geek. We've also got a 4-year-old bulldog called Reggie. But it's part of my family. It's part of our existence. It's everything we do. But it doesn't mean it's not hard at times.
Yeah, same with kids, right?
I
always think with kids, I always explain it to people that it's just stretches the extremities of your happiness and your sadness, or
I'm way more comfortable. I'm way more comfortable in the business. Like it's funny, like Lucy, my wife, she's in the business, so like she'll come to me with a business issue, and I'll go bang, 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 done, great, crack on. She'll come to me with like, this has happened with our little boy, or he's refusing to go to the sleepover, which we do this. I'm like, I've got no idea. I've got no idea what to. I'm absolutely useless. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, it's cool. So, final question then, and I'll let you go for the day. So, if you're talking to somebody who's potentially about to invest in a franchise license, whether that's yours or anybody else's, what's the most important? What's the one piece of advice that you'd give to them?
I would, without reservation, say go where you think you belong. I would look beyond financial models. I would look beyond even some of the ROI stuff, because the ROI stuff's great, but if you're earning the coin but not enjoying it, it doesn't really matter. So I would say find an organization that has a culture and a set of values and a mission that you buy into, that you believe in, that you live, and feels like it's part of your DNA. And through, reaching out to some of the existing franchisees in that organization, getting a real feel and a vibe for who these people are. And for me, go and hang out where you belong, over and above anything else, as far as I'm concerned.
Yep, perfect. Love that advice, and it makes a lot of sense. So, Richard, I'm going to say thank you very much there, and really appreciate you sharing so much of your time with us, and for giving us an insight into your career in Sales Geek. So, thanks very much.
Cheers, dude. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Take care. Bye-bye.